Chapter 1031. Then what are you talking about? David frowned, his face full of displeasure. Although I can't rescue your girlfriend, I have the ability to arrange for you to meet. Do you want to meet your girlfriend? Ningxi raised his brows. What's the price? David asked directly. There will definitely be a price for Ningxi to help himself, but just to meet him and take away the 90,000 mile mountain and river map and storage ring in his hand, David will never agree. The price is that you have to accompany us to Suolong Island. As soon as Ningxi's voice fell, David was stunned. He never thought that the price of Ningxi would be this. Go to Suolong Island. David said in surprise, now that time has passed, what are you going to do on Suolong Island? The two dragons on Suolong Island, one ice and one fire, have long passed the days of haunting, and the ice dragon has been eliminated by David and the dragon crystal has been taken out. He really does not understand, what is Ningxi doing on Suolong Island? Don't ask so much about this, just say yes or no. Ningxi stared closely at David and asked. How can I believe you, when you arrive at Suolong Island, you won't do anything to me? You know that with your current strength, if you want to do something to me, I can't run away at all. A peak Wuzong, an 8th rank Wuzong, then the Northwest Wangwukaiwan is at least a 7th grade Wuzong. David is impossible to be the opponent of these three people. Don't worry, only me and Mr. Gu will go with you. We're really going to be unfavorable to you. Even if you can't beat the two of us, if you escape, I'm afraid the two of us won't be able to stop you, right? Ningxi smiled lightly. David pondered for a moment, and finally gritted his teeth. Okay, I promise you, when will you take me to see my girlfriend? Ha ha ha, anytime. Ningxi laughed. David looked at Ningxi in disbelief. This Ning family does not belong to the sect family in the Martial Arts Alliance, but can freely enter and exit the dungeons in the Martial Arts Alliance. If this is the case, then this Ning family is too scary. Seeing David's face in disbelief, Ningxi patted David's shoulder. Brother Chen, the water in the martial arts world is very deep, it's not as you see it on the surface. When do you want to meet me? Girlfriend, let me know directly, but we are going to Suolong Island tomorrow. Then I'll go see her now. David said eagerly. Okay, you go with me. Ningxi nodded. David followed Ningxi out of the Protectorate Pavilion, and then Ningxi let Gu Kaiwan and the old man leave first, while Ningxi took David straight to the Martial Arts Alliance. Are we going in like this? David was a little surprised. Could Ningxi bring him in so openly? Just follow me, don't worry about the rest. After Ningxi finished speaking, he took David to the side of the alley of the Martial Arts Alliance. David looked at Ningxi, wondering how he brought himself into the dungeon of the Martial Arts Alliance. I saw Ningxi calmly took out a metal-like bracelet from his arms. The surface of the bracelet was patina, and it looked very ancient, as if it had just been dug from an ancient tomb. After that, Ningxi said something in his mouth, and then he threw the bracelet in the air, and the bracelet became bigger in the air, and a dark entrance appeared in the bracelet. David looked at it in shock, full of surprise. What is this? This is called the Kyunkan Circle. It is rumored that it was used by the third prince, Neza. This Kyunkan Circle can pass through the void and reach any place you want to go. It's just because of damage, it can only transmit 100 meters now. Ningxi introduced. 100 meters. David couldn't help but sigh. Although this universe circle is a good thing, it can only transmit 100 meters. This distance is too tasteless. Chapter 1032. No wonder Ningxi brought himself to the alley on the side of the Martial Arts Alliance. Let's go. Ningxi said and jumped into the dark entrance first. David followed closely, and then David felt dark in front of him, and the whole person seemed to be floating in outer space, but before David could feel it carefully, his eyes lit up. David saw that he was already in a dungeon, surrounded by doors made of fine steel with the thickness of the wrist. Although it was a dungeon, the air in the dungeon was very dry. "We only have 3 minutes, hurry up, the innermost cell is." Ning Ji told David. David nodded and hurriedly walked towards the innermost cell. When David passed through the cell door and saw Sonia, he was instantly excited. "I saw Sonia lying on the bed, and the various facilities in the cell were considered perfect." "Sonia!" David shouted excitedly. Hearing David's voice, Sonia jumped up from the bed. When she saw David, the whole person was also excited. "David, why are you here?" Sonia hurried to the door of the cell, and the two of them held hands tightly together across the iron gate of the cell. Seeing that Sonia was in good spirits and didn't look like she was abused, David felt a lot more. "Sonia, are you okay? They didn't make things difficult for you, did they?" David asked with concern. Sonia shook her head. "They treat me very well, except for taking a small vial of blood from me every day, they didn't do anything else." "How did you get in?" After speaking, Sonia asked curiously. "I was brought in by someone else, don't worry, I will definitely save you from here, these guys in the Martial Arts Alliance, I will make them pay the price." As David said that, a strong killing intent began to rise from his body. "Exposing the breath here, don't you die." Ning Ji felt the killing intent on David and was shocked. When David heard it, he hurriedly took back the breath he had given off. Sonia looked at Ning Ji and asked David, "Who is he?" "A friend of mine." David did not follow Sonia to tell the truth, he was afraid that Sonia would worry about him. "1 more minute, hurry up and talk." Ning Ji looked at the time, and then reminded David. "David, you are outside, you must take care of yourself, don't be impulsive, I am fine here." Sonia told David that she was afraid that David would be impulsive and conflict with these guys in the Martial Arts Alliance. With David's current strength, it is impossible to be an opponent of the Martial Arts Alliance. "But I can't watch you being kept here, I must find a way to get you out," David said with a concerned look. "Okay, it's time, let's go." As Ning Ji said, he threw the Kyunkan circle in the air, and soon a dark entrance appeared. "David, you must be calm, I will not be in danger here, you can rest assured." Sonia looked at David reluctantly and said. David also firmly grabbed Sonia's hand, his eyes full of reluctance and self-blame. "No, I want to take you with me." Looking at Sonia, David suddenly grabbed the 2 steel bars of the prison door with both hands, all the spiritual power in his body was condensed in his hands, and he suddenly broke it with force. He wanted to break the steel bars, rescue Sonia, and take them away together. However, the blue veins on David's forehead bulged, no matter how hard he tried, the steel bars would not move at all. "Let's go quickly, that steel bar is forged with fine steel refined in the East China Sea, let alone you, even a marquis can't shake it at all." Ning Ji stepped forward and pulled David to say. Chapter 1033. "David, don't waste your energy, let's go quickly." Sonia looked at David like that and persuaded distressedly. "I want to rescue you." David gritted his teeth, and the spiritual power in his body began to explode. At this moment, footsteps began to be heard outside the cell. When Ning Ji heard it, he knew that someone was coming, and hurriedly pulled David, "Come on, someone is coming." Ning Ji took David and jumped into the dark entrance. After the two entered, the entrance disappeared directly, as if no one had come. Just as Ning Ji followed David to leave, Zhu Zishan brought someone in, glanced around, and Zhu Zishan frowned. "Has anyone been here before?" Zhu Zishan asked the 2 guards. "Leader, no one has come before," said one of the guards. Zhu Zishan pondered for a moment, and then said to the 2 guards, "Take care of me, no one is allowed to let them in without my permission." As ordered. The 2 guards bent slightly. Glancing at Sonia, Zhu Zishan turned and left. "Don't you want to die, kid?" In the alley on the side of the Martial Arts Alliance, Ning Ji glared at David. If Ning Ji hadn't pulled David out just now, they would have been discovered. With the strength of the two of them, I am afraid that they will be subdued in an instant. David looked at the wall of the Martial Arts Alliance without saying a word, but a cold glow flashed in his eyes. Seeing David like this, Ning Ji said lightly, "Don't forget to promise me tomorrow." After speaking, Ning Ji turned around and left. David stayed for more than half an hour before he left reluctantly. Back at the Guardian Pavilion, Zhao Waoqi saw that David was back, and hurriedly stepped forward and asked, "Mr. Chen, have you seen Miss Su?" David nodded, but he was not in a good mood. His girlfriend was locked in the dungeon of the Martial Arts Alliance, but he had nothing to do, which made David feel that he was useless. At this time, Gu Linger walked out of David's room, saw David coming back, and hurriedly asked, "David, have you seen Sonia? Is she all right?" David was stunned for a moment, then looked at Zhao Waoqi. Zhao Waoqi said with an embarrassed expression, "I told Miss Gu." David didn't want Gu Linger to know, because he was afraid that she would be worried. Now that he knows, he nodded, "I see, Sonia is fine." Sure enough, Sonia was caught by the guys from the Martial Arts Alliance. "These guys are really bad," Gu Linger said angrily. "I will make them pay sooner or later." David gritted his teeth, and his eyes were full of anger. This time, the hatred between him and the Martial Arts Alliance was likely to end. "David, I heard Pavilion Master Zhao say that you want to go to Suolong Island with someone, and I want to go with you too. It just so happens that I also want to see Xiaoru," Gu Linger said. "No, you stay in the Dharma Protector Pavilion, I'll be back in a few days." David refused at once. David still doesn't know what medicine is sold in the Ningxi gourd. It would be very dangerous for Gu Linger to follow her. Seeing that David disagreed, Gu Linger wanted to say something, only to see David wave his hand, "I'm a little tired, go and rest first." This time, when I went to see Sonia, it was a big blow to David's spirit. Seeing his own woman, locked in a dungeon, he was helpless. Anyone who put this kind of thing on would be depressed. Gu Linger wanted to catch up, but was stopped by Zhao Waoqi. "Miss Gu, you should let Mr. Chen be quiet, I guess he's not feeling well right now." When Gu Linger heard this, she stopped and watched David walk into the room, and then closed the door. Gu Linger and Zhao Waoqi looked at each other, the two of them could only leave, and no one was bothering David. Chapter 1034. The next morning, Ning Ji took Gu Kaiwan and came to the law enforcement pavilion to pick up David early. David got into Ning Ji's car, and then the car got on the expressway and headed straight for Nanhua City. Just when David got into Ning Ji's car and rushed to Nanhua City, Gu Linger also bought a ticket to Nanhua City. David and the others came for a whole day's journey before arriving in Nanhua City. After arriving in Nanhua City, David found that Nanhua City had changed a lot, and there were more tourists. And on the pier, there are cruise ships everywhere, and there are many travel agencies, all with posters for a day trip to Suolong Island at the door. Seeing this scene, David was a little confused. When did Suolong Island become a tourist destination for ordinary people? Isn't Suolong Island guarded by the dragon family? Moreover, all kinds of beasts appear, and the environment above is not suitable for ordinary people to play. Looking at David's confused face, Ning Ji explained with a slight smile, "Since you got the ice dragon crystal, the environment on Suolong Island has undergone earth-shaking changes. No more beasts. The legendary Yanlong is nowhere to be seen, so the Long family has released Suolong Island, making Suolong Island a holy place for sightseeing, and the Long family has benefited a lot from it." After listening to Ning Ji's explanation, David realized that Suolong Island became like this because of himself. Now this Suolong Island has become a tourist destination that everyone can go to. "What are you taking me to?" David asked strangely. "I said, keep it a secret for now." Ning Ji smiled, you won't promise me what I'm going to do, right? I took you to meet your girlfriend. Don't worry, since I promised you, I will go with you. David said lightly. Ningxi smiled and didn't say anything, but found a hotel to stay in, and they were going to leave early tomorrow morning. Just after David and the others stayed, Gu Linger also appeared in Nanhua City, but she stayed in another hotel. Linger. Just when Gu Linger was checking in, someone suddenly called her. Gu Linger searched for fame and found that it was Gu Wenchen. Grandfather. Gu Linger's face was full of excitement. She hurried over and hugged Gu Wenchen. Grandpa, why are you here? I heard that there is a new tourist destination in Nanhua City. It's called Suolong Island. It is like spring all year round and the scenery is very good, so I asked your Uncle Sud to go there for a walk, always staying in Horindal. You're going to be suffocated. Gu Wenchen laughed. Linger, at this time, Reuben also shouted. Uncle Su. Gu Linger greeted Reuben. Behind Reuben, there were Lin Tianhu and Chifeng, both of whom seemed to have recovered from their injuries. Hello, Linger girl. Lin Tianhu and Chifeng said hello to Gu Linger together. Gu Linger nodded, it was a response. Linger, why are you here? What about David and the others? At this time, Gu Wenchen asked Gu Linger. I also heard that there is a Suolong Island with good scenery, so I came to play. David and Sonia were not with me. Gu Linger didn't know how to follow Gu Wenchen. After all, Reuben was also there. Could it be said that Sonia was arrested, and she followed David secretly? When Gu Wenchen heard this, his face instantly turned cold, and he hurriedly pulled Gu Linger aside. Linger, what's the matter? Are you arguing with David? Or maybe David doesn't want you anymore? Grandpa, where do you want to go? David and I are on good terms, don't think about it, I just want to go out for a walk by myself. Gu Linger said with a frown. It's fine if there is no quarrel. Gu Wenchen breathed a sigh of relief. Gu Linger originally wanted to go out to find David's whereabouts after completing the check-in procedures, but now there is no chance. Chapter 1035. The next morning, Gu Wenchen and Reuben got up early. They bought a ticket for a luxury cruise ship. When they went on board last night, Gu Wenchen also booked one for Gu Linger. Linger, you haven't gone shopping with Grandpa for a long time. This time we had a good time for 2 days. Gu Wenchen gave Gu Linger the purchased ticket. This time, Gu Linger followed David. She was afraid that David would be in danger. If she followed Gu Wenchen and the others, how could she find David? Grandpa, Gu Linger wanted to refuse, but didn't know how to say it. What am I? Don't you want to hang out with Grandpa? Do you dislike Grandpa's old age? Gu Wenchen asked with a raised face. No. Gu Linger waved his hands again and again. No, then come with us. Gu Wenchen involuntarily pulled up Gu Linger and left. Soon, everyone came to the pier. At this time, there were a lot of people on the pier, and many ships were moored on the sea. Among them was a huge and very luxurious cruise ship, which was the ship that Gu Wenchen and the others were on. The fare of this ship is not low, so there are not many boarding gates on this cruise ship, but all of them are people with status take a luxury cruise like this. After Gu Wenchen checked the tickets and boarded the boat, Gu Linger kept looking back. She wanted to see where David was. However, there are thousands of people at the dock. If you want to find a person, you will undoubtedly find a needle in a haystack. Linger, what's wrong with you today? Are you looking for someone? Gu Wenchen saw that Gu Linger kept looking back, so he asked. No, I'm just taking a look. Gu Linger hurriedly squeezed out a few smiles. Standing on the deck of the cruise ship, looking at the cruise ship that had started slowly, Gu Linger was still worried about David. Zhao Waoqi had told her that Ningxi was a very sinister person, that's why Gu Linger was so worried. Just when Gu Linger was worried about David, she suddenly felt a shock, and she felt 3 auras approaching her. Most of the people on this cruise ship are ordinary people. Even if there are some warriors, they are only internal warriors, and there are very few masters. On this cruise ship, the strength of Lin Tianhu and Chi Feng can crush everyone. But these 3 breaths, Gu Linger can feel that the strength is not lower than himself. When Gu Linger looked along these 3 breaths, she was surprised to find that it was David and the others. Seeing that it was David, Gu Linger wanted to hide, but David told her not to let her come. She is now following secretly, afraid that David will be angry. However, David also discovered Gu Linger at this time. When David saw Gu Linger, his whole body was slightly shocked, but he did not go over to greet Gu Linger. "Brother Chen, what's wrong?" Feeling David's strangeness, Ning Ji asked. "Oh, it's okay, maybe the sea breeze is a little cold, let's go back." David smiled lightly. "Okay." Ning Ji nodded. But just when David and the others turned around and wanted to return to the cabin, someone suddenly shouted at David. "David!" Immediately afterwards, several people hurried towards David. David turned his head and frowned instantly. He saw Reuben, Gu Wenchen, Lin Tianhu and Chi Feng are walking towards him with happy faces. At this time, David was thinking of pretending he didn't know them, which was obviously impossible. Seeing this, Gu Linger had no choice but to walk with them. "Uncle Su, ancient." David could only bite the bullet and step forward, and greeted Reuben and Gu Wenchen. "David, I didn't expect it to be such a coincidence that you are here too. We met Linger last night, and it felt like a coincidence. I didn't expect to meet you today," Gu Wenchen said in surprise. Chapter 1036. "Mr. Chen, since you and Miss Linger both went to Suolong Island, why aren't you together?" At this time, Lin Tianhu asked very strangely. David didn't know how to answer Lin Tianhu for a while. "I ran out by myself, and David doesn't know how to go together," Gu Linger said at this time. "Yes, I didn't know Linger also went to Suolong Island." David nodded hurriedly. "David, where is Sonia? Are you not with Sonia?" Reuben swept around and found that Sonia was not there, so he asked David. David was stunned for a moment. He didn't know what to say to Reuben, but in the end he decided to hide it from Reuben, so he lied. "Sonia has something else, so I didn't come with me, I was with my friends." David pointed to Ning Ji and Gu Kaiwan behind him. Ning Ji stepped forward with a smile on his face, followed Gu Wenchen and Reuben to say hello. "Hello, I'm David's friend, my name is Ning Ji." "Hello." Gu Wenchen and Reuben also followed Ning Ji to say hello. After a few chats, the group returned to the cabin. Gu Wenchen and Reuben were both happy and excited because of the encounter with Gu Linger and David. In a certain room, Gu Wenchen and Reuben chatted happily with David. During this time, David was running around and rarely returned to Horrendal. The two of them also missed David. "David, that friend of yours named Ning Ji looks good, who should he be, right? The noble temperament exuding from him, I am afraid that the whole Horrendal will not be able to find such a young man." Reuben asked David. "Well, he is from the Ning family in Jingjing. This guy looks very kind, but it is actually very difficult to deal with. So Uncle Su, Gu, you should stay away from him and ignore him," David exhorted Reuben and Gu Wenchen. Hearing what David said, although Gu Wenchen and Reuben were a little surprised, they still nodded. After chatting for a while, David called Gu Linger aside alone. "Linger, didn't I tell you not to come?" David's face was a little gloomy. I'm afraid you're in danger." Seeing that David was angry, Gu Linger lowered her head and explained in a low voice. "I tell you, when you arrive at Suolong Island, don't follow me with the ancients. If you follow me, not only can you not help me, but you will also support me." David warned Gu Linger very seriously. David knew that there must be nothing good about Ning Ji bringing himself to Suolong Island. If it was just himself, if something happened, he would still have the ability to escape. But now all of a sudden Gu Wenchen and Reuben are here, and these people have become a burden to David. At that time, Ning Ji randomly arrests one of them and threatens him, and David can't just sit back and ignore it. Gu Linger nodded, she also felt that she was following, a little reckless. At this moment, in another room not far away, Ning Ji is in a good mood. Ha ha ha, God helped me. I didn't expect to meet David's relatives here. Now, I'm not afraid that David will not obey. Ning Ji gently picked up the red wine and took a sip. Master Ning, among these people, I think that woman is the most important to David. When we control that woman, David will be obedient. Northwest Wang Guokaiwan said. Yes, I saw it too. I didn't expect David to be a lover, and there are women everywhere showing mercy. A bit of jealousy flashed in Ning Ji's eyes, and then he continued, we brought David to Long Island. Are you sure you can use that David to lure Yan Long out? Chapter 1037. Young Master Ning, don't worry, as long as David is on Sualong Island, then the Yanlong will definitely appear. David has the Ice Dragon crystal on his body, and now Yanlong's strength is definitely the weakest. As long as we kill Yanlong, get the Flame Dragon crystal, kill David, take out the Ice Dragon crystal, as long as the two dragon crystals are fused, the dragon crystal at that time will give birth to the power of the dragon. Many wealthy families don't look down on this dragon crystal and think it's useless, but they don't know that this dragon crystal must be combined with two pieces. If Ning Gongzi swallows these two pieces of dragon crystal, I guarantee that your strength will instantly enter Wuzong Peak, and has the strongest strength of the same rank. Gu Kaiwan said with fiery eyes. After Ning Ji heard this, the whole person became excited. Ha ha ha, when I get Longjing and reach the peak of Wuzong, I will definitely find a way to make your Gu family have a place in Kyoto. Thank you, young Master Ning. Gu Kaiwan hurriedly thanked. Although Gu Kaiwan is the king of the Northwest is a barren land after all. Even if Gu Kaiwan becomes the king of the Northwest, in the eyes of the sect family in other places, he has no status. So he always wanted to squeeze into the Kyoto martial arts world and have his own place in Kyoto. He found Ning Ji and told the secret of Sualong Island. Gu Kaiwan knew that even if he didn't say it himself, with his strength, it was impossible to get two dragon crystals at the same time. Inside the bar on the cruise ship, David is tasting red wine with Gu Linger. This luxurious cruise ship has everything on it, even a swimming pool, which is extremely luxurious. It's just that David has no interest in these. It takes 2 days to arrive at Sualong Island. David used these 2 days to accompany Gu Linger well. As for what will happen on the island, no one can imagine. Brother David, if you are accompanied by beautiful women, have you forgotten my friend? At this time, Ning Ji and Gu Kaiwan came over and sat directly opposite David. The moment he sat down, Gu Kaiwan's fingers twitched slightly, and an inaudible breath entered the red wine bottle in front of David. David and Gu Linger didn't even notice. David glanced at Ning Ji and just smiled lightly. Would you like to have a drink? No need, this cruise ship has everything on it, and the scenery at sea is also beautiful. You just sat here drinking, and you have failed this luxurious cruise ship. Ning Ji smiled slightly. I don't like walking around. David shook his head. Well, since you don't like shopping, then I won't disturb you chatting with beautiful women. Ning Ji stood up and said to Gu Kaiwan, let's go. Ning Ji and Gu Kaiwan got up and left. Gu Linger looked at the backs of the two, frowned and said, these two guys, at first glance, are not good people, especially the one named Ning Ji, who is a smiling tiger, all covered in heart. David smiled lightly. He has Zhang Liang's plan. I have a wall ladder. I also want to know, what is the purpose of them taking me to Sualong Island? No matter why, it's definitely not good anyway, you have to be careful. Gu Linger reminded with a worried look. At this moment, Lin Tianhu came over and said, Mr. Chen, Miss Linger, Gu asked you to come over. David was a little strange, not knowing what Gu Wenchen suddenly asked them to do. When Gu Wenchen arrived in Gu Wenchen's room, Gu Wenchen said excitedly, "David, have you heard? So there is an auction on this cruise ship. I heard that the auction is all about antiques salvaged from the sea. I'm going to ask you to come with me to see." Gu Wenchen's biggest hobby is collecting antiques. He went out to sea this time, but he didn't expect that there would be an auction on the cruise ship. "There's still an auction here." David was a little surprised, but after thinking about it, the people who can get on this luxury cruise ship are all rich and famous, so if you open an auction on this, you will definitely make a lot of money. Chapter 1038. Now David is starting to admire the owner of this cruise ship. The group, guided by the waiter on the cruise ship, found the place for the auction. This place has long been crowded with people. It seems that rich people like to collect them. After all, they can't spend a lot of money, so what's the use? Moreover, the collection also has investment value. If you find a leak at the auction, you will make a profit. Because of the rules of the auction, you need to pay a deposit before you can participate in the auction, so after Gu Wenchen paid a deposit of 1 million, everyone walked in. I found a relatively remote place, a few people sat down, and waited for the auction to start. At this time, David saw that Ning Ji followed Gu Kaiwan, but they were a little far away from him. Gu Wenchen's face was full of excitement at this time, and he had been gearing up. "Reuben, if I encounter something good in a while and I don't have enough money, you have to support me." Gu Wenchen leaned into Reuben's ear and said. "Don't worry, Gu, I will definitely support you." Reuben smiled and nodded. "Ancient, I have a card on my body, and I don't know how much money there is in it. It is estimated that there are billions. You can take it first. When you see something you like, take a picture." David took out a bank card from his body and gave it to Gu Wenchen. The money on David's card is all from the sale of some medicinal materials and from Feng Dong's mining of ores. Now he doesn't care, there will be a steady stream of money deposited into his card. "No, how can I use your money? You still have a lot of places to use it." Gu Wenchen waved his hands again and again. Gu Wenchen knew that David had to spend a lot of money to buy herbs and various resources in order to cultivate, so David's money was still useful. It's just that Gu Wenchen still doesn't know that David has rarely used spiritual stones or herbs in his cultivation. Let's not say that he is now the owner of the Valley of Medicine God. It is enough for David to practice. "Ancient, I don't have a place to spend money now, just take it." David put the card into Gu Wenchen's hands. Gu Wenchen wanted to refuse, but Gu Linger said, "Grandpa, if he gave it to you, you can take it, it's all money from the family anyway." Gu Linger's words made Gu Wenchen stunned for a moment, then he laughed loudly, "Yes, yes, the family's money, I take it, I take it." Gu Linger also felt as if she had said something wrong, and her face turned red all of a sudden. "Ancient, we will also be a family in the future, if the money is not enough for a while, even if you talk to me," Reuben said with a smile. David was with Gu Linger and Sonia. Whether it was Reuben or Gu Wenchen, there was no objection. They all know that David is by no means a thing in the pool, and even if he has 3 wives and 4 C0 cub, ness in the future, it will be nothing. Soon, the auction will start, and the host takes the stage. Today's auction, we are fortunate to have Jin Dong at the scene. We asked Jin Dong to come on stage to say a few words. As the host's voice fell, a man with a beard and a big belly stepped onto the stage. This man's name is Jin Fuxian. He is the most powerful man in Nanhua City. He controls all the piers in Nanhua City, as well as ships of that size. Even this cruise ship belongs to Jin Fuxian. It can be seen that Jin Fuxian's financial resources, compared to some families in Kyoto, are even more than that. This Jin Fuxian is a martial artist, and now he has the strength of a master. In the past, Jin Fuxian lived by fishing in the sea. Later, it is said that Jin Fuxian caught a big fish and found a bead in the belly of the big fish. Jin Fuxian devoured it. After that, his strength increased greatly, which made him control the entire dock. In recent years, Jin Fuxian's fleet has salvaged a lot of antique jades. Because Jin Fuxian is a vulgar person and doesn't like these things, he started auctions. A firm foothold in Nanhua City. Chapter 1039. Everyone, first of all, thank you for participating in this auction. The items in this auction are absolutely worth the money, but they were all salvaged from a sunken ship thousands of years ago. If you like it, then do it as soon as possible. If you start late, you won't have a chance. Jin Fuxian held the microphone and said emotionally, "Now I announce that the auction will begin." As Jin Fuxian's voice fell, a glass bottle that was as tall as a person and covered with patterns was lifted out. When he saw this, Gu Wenquan's eyes instantly lit up. After a round of fighting, Gu Wenquan successfully won the glass bottle with 50 million. Then the second, the third. Every time Gu Wenquan saw it, he couldn't contain his excitement, and then he started shooting frantically. After taking pictures of dozens of antiques in a row, Gu Wenquan seemed to have no end in sight, his eyes turned red. This is probably the coolest time he has ever participated in an auction. Gu Wenquan's actions attracted everyone's attention to him. Although the people who came here were all wealthy people, such local tyrants were rare, and even Ningxi couldn't help but be a little stunned. And Jin Fuxian, who was sitting in the front row, couldn't help but look back at Gu Wenquan, his eyes were a little unpredictable. "Grandpa, that's almost it. How much did you spend?" "All the money David gave you has been spent." Gu Linger also felt the same gaze from everyone, and hurriedly pulled the corner of Gu Wenquan's clothes. After being reminded by Gu Linger, Gu Wenquan was a little more awake, and hurriedly said embarrassedly, "I can't control myself when I see these antiques, I won't buy it, I won't buy it below." "Linger, if your grandfather likes it, let him buy it. I still have some money here. It's rare to see antiques like this salvaged from the sea." Reuben was on the side, he smiled. Yes, your Uncle Su is right. There are not many antiques salvaged from the sea. When we get them, they may increase in value directly." Gu Wenquan now found an excuse to buy antiques for himself. Hearing this, Gu Linger sighed directly, and felt a little helpless, because she knew that Gu Wenquan really likes antiques. In the entire auction, apart from a few antiques that were not in good condition and that Gu Wenquan didn't like, the rest were taken away by Gu Wenquan, and the transaction price alone was tens of billions. After the auction ended, Gu Wenquan left reluctantly. Those antiques would be packed and delivered to Gu Wenquan's house after the cruise ship returned to Nanhua City. With this auction, the 2-day itinerary made Gu Wenquan almost a celebrity, and many people began to make friends with Gu Wenquan. 2 days later, the cruise ship arrived at Suolong Island. The scenery here is not the same as it was a few months ago. There is no scorching sun, nor the cold covered by ice and snow. And the air on Suolong Island is very fresh and makes people feel very comfortable. In addition to David's cruise ship, there are many other ships arriving on Suolong Island. At this time, there are many tourists on Suolong Island. "Linger, you will take the ancients for a while, follow other tourists to play, don't follow me." Approaching disembarkation, David warned Gu Linger again. Gu Linger nodded, and then said worriedly, "You have to be careful yourself." "Don't worry, just these 2 people, if I want to leave, they can't keep me." David is not worried, even if he can't beat Ningxi and Gu Kaiwan, it is still easy to escape. If Ningxi and Gu Kaiwan play tricks, David can get out completely. Chapter 1040. After everyone arrived on Suolong Island from the cruise ship, Gu Linger took Gu Wenquan and the others and left with many tourists. "Brother David, aren't your friends with us?" Seeing that Gu Linger and Gu Wenquan had left, Ningxi asked in surprise. "No, it's too cumbersome to have them here." David smiled faintly. Ningxi also understood what David meant, smiled, and said, "Then let's go." With Ningxi and Gu Kaiwan in the front and David in the back, the three headed towards the depths of Suolong Island. Gu Kaiwan took out a compass from his body and began to mutter something in his mouth, constantly nagging about something. I saw that the compass in Gu Kaiwan's hand suddenly rose into the air, emitting a faint red light. After a few laps in place, the compass began to move toward the southeast at a high speed. Follow up. Gu Kaiwan said something, and immediately began to run quickly. Ningxi and David are also close behind. After running for more than half an hour, the compass stopped and returned to Gu Kaiwan's hands. It's here. Gu Kaiwan looked around and said. What are you looking for? David asked strangely. Ningxi narrowed his eyes and said, we are looking for Yanlong's whereabouts. After you swallowed the ice dragon crystal, the island has undergone tremendous changes, and Yanlong also disappeared together. Now we have to find Yanlong. Take out the Yanlong dragon crystal. Then you asked me to come, you don't want me to help you deal with Yanlong, right? Your Ning family's masters are stronger than me. David was surprised. It is said that there are many masters in the Ning family. Even if it is to deal with Yanlong, there is no need to call David. The hunchbacked old man who has been following Ningxi is the strength of Wuzong's peak, stronger than David's strength, so David knows that. Ningxi asked himself to come, definitely not to deal with Yanlong. Of course not. You won't be needed to deal with Yanlong, but only the blood on your body can lead out the hiding Yanlong. A flash of killing intent flashed in Ningxi's eyes. This time, David understood why Ningxi wanted to call himself to Suolong Island. It turned out that he used himself as a bait to draw out Yanlong. Do you think you two can stop me? David's aura began to rise. Ha ha ha, can you stop you? It doesn't matter if you say it. Ningxi laughed, then looked at Gu Kaiwan and said, do it. Gu Kaiwan nodded, then opened his mouth slightly, as if he was thinking something. David looked at Gu Kaiwan in surprise, wondering what this guy was doing. However, at this time, Gu Linger, who was dozens of miles away from them, suddenly screamed and had a splitting headache, and the whole person fell to the ground and passed out. Gu Kaiwan chanted the spell for more than 10 minutes, and found that David was standing still and didn't react. This made Gu Kaiwan a little stunned. Are you going to nag me to death with your mouth? David asked Gu Kaiwan jokingly. What's going on? Ningxi frowned and asked Gu Kaiwan. When David and Gu Linger were drinking, Gu Kaiwan secretly did some tricks, but now he found that David was fine. I don't know either, I've obviously poisoned them. Gu Kaiwan was also very confused, and didn't understand why David didn't respond. When he heard that Gu Kaiwan had poisoned himself, David's face instantly turned cold. Who else did you poison? David has a condensed heart to protect his body, and any poison is useless to him, but others are different. If Gu Linger and the others are also poisoned, it will be dangerous now. And the little beauty beside you, the red wine you drank has already been manipulated by me, maybe now your little beauty is poisoned. So, if you can listen to us obediently now, I will give you the antidote later, and then